We are a quarter of the way through the season. Which team trends are going to persist and which ones are mirages? Fred and I are going to break that down, among other topics, here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinke, and we've got a lot to talk about here today, including a really bad streaming slate for the week. Fred's going to lament about that. We're going to talk about my woeful Reds and just the way they're finding new ways to lose all of a sudden there. We're going to do all that. Of course, we're brought to you by the good folks from Sorare and from Prize Picks. So thanks to you there for their sponsorship. Fred, let's jump right into it here. We're a quarter of the way through the season. There's a lot of interesting team trends.
There's it's like, because I'll start over there. A quarter kind of sneaks up on us a little bit earlier, I find now, because play starts about a week earlier than it used to. We used to talk about kind of May long weekend, but now I'm finding we're hitting the quarter pole a little bit earlier. So I noticed we're a quarter of the way through. That's a good sample size. Like baseball, it's a quarter of the way through the season, and hockey or basketball be halfway through the season. So at 40, 45 games. So, it's time to start looking at some of these team trends. And because I write a lot of articles about pitching matchups, right? And I'm advising, hey, stream your pitchers against the A's. Hey, don't stream your pitchers against, maybe in Cincinnati. Does that still matter? Is that accurate? Because so far the A's have been not really good, but average offensively. Cincinnati's been poor offensively. So we got to figure out what's useful among the stats so far and what's just an aberration and you should continue to ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start off with the Brewers. One of the top 5 offenses in baseball so far, despite Christian Yelich missing a big chunk of time already. Is this going to persist? Should we start avoiding the Brewers, especially in Milwaukee?
I've been starting to avoid them a little bit. I haven't gone full avoiding the Brewers, but they have been fairly fortunate. So I try to look at some advanced stats to see what I think is sustainable and what's not. Sometimes it's not that simple. Like some of the teams talk about, sometimes you just have to trust that players are going to return to their level. But the Brewers, for example, are tied for second in baseball so far this year in BABIP. They're also 4th in home run to fly ball rate. So they have been fairly fortunate on batted balls. So I think they've been a little bit lucky. When you just use the eye test on the Brewers lineup, does it feel like a top 5 lineup? It doesn't really to me. I think it's a bit of a mirage. I think I've decided on the Brewers, be a little careful, but I'm not avoiding them. I wouldn't avoid the Brewers like I would avoid the Braves, even though the Brewers have been every bit as good offensively as the Braves so far. Do you think I'm not giving the Brewers enough credit? My stance is, some guys like Bryce Terang have probably Willie Adames too, who's having a really nice season, have probably been a little over their skis so far.
Well, let's take a look at some of the numbers. WRC plus of 115, tied for 3rd in baseball with the Phillies, who won again today, by the way. Their WOBA is 2nd in baseball at 334, behind only the Dodgers, also kind of tied with the Phillies, basically. Just pure runs, they're 4th in baseball at 209. The Dodgers, Phillies, and Diamondbacks are ahead of them, and the Brewers have played fewer games than them. They've only played 41 games going into today's play too. So it's not even like they've had the benefit of playing more games. BABIP is high, like you said. So they're getting there. A lot of their production is getting there in terms of batting average, but they're 7th in baseball in walk percentage, 9.5% walk percentage there. Strikeout percentage. They actually strike out a decent amount, 23.6%. Is their percentage. Their ISO is 6th in baseball, 162. So what that means is they're getting on base, and then when they're on base, they're hitting for power. So yes, the BABIP is really high. I get that. But it's kind of supported by some other metrics there. I was going
to say, okay, so let's say I'm ranking lineups based on just how I'm concerned I am about putting pitchers against them going forward, I'm going to have the Brewers more like 10th or back end of the top 10. That's how I feel. Like this is again, like you have
Yeah.
to mesh. Like you can't just say like, oh, they're like third in run scored or whatever you said they were like so I'm putting them third. Like you have to blend the eye test. We have to blend common sense and data beyond this year and whatever. So anyways, I'm going to put them kind of back into the top 10, which means like I'm not interested in stream. I'm not really excited to stream against them, but I'm not avoiding them with a pitcher who I would normally start.
I think that's fair. I think that's
like
fair.
a mid-level, like I'm going to use my mid-level starters against them. But when I'm picking my last spot or two, if I see one start against the Brewers, like for my last guy, I'm probably going to look for someone else.
Yeah. So if like you were looking at Matt Manning as a stream this week, for instance, and I was, and he had his Miami game yesterday and it was just okay. And now he's got the Diamondbacks, which is much tougher coming up. If I saw the Brewers on there and Matt Manning, I'd probably avoid it. How about that? As a replacement level starter, maybe even slightly better than that, but still, that's a matchup I'm not going to seek out. I cut Miles Michaelis finally in the main event this week after he got a win against the Brewers, ironically enough, but I did not like that start against him, and he almost got knocked out in the first inning against them on Sunday. But it's just that's just not a matchup I'm inviting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Tigers, I could pick up some good, like Reese Olson. He's kind of like a back end of my rotation where I have him kind of guy. Like, not one of my usually one of my top 3 or 4 starters is usually someone, even though his numbers are good so far, I'm not fully bought in. If I saw one start at the Brewers, I would probably try to find a way around that. Right. So if I'm going up a level, like I'm starting I'm just looking at just random pitchers on the RotoWire grid right now, Ronel Blanco or someone like that. I would start him against Milwaukee. Like this isn't like a Dodgers situation where I'm looking to sit guys who I normally start.
It's not at Philly. When Philly's got their full lineup.
Yeah.
Philly's missing their full lineup right now. Real Muto missed today. Obviously Trey Turner's out 6 weeks. Harper missed today because of a migraine, actually. So that's 3 key guys that are out of the line. But Schwarber just came back from an injury. But normally I'm scared to death of at Philly. I benched Chris Bassett last week, missed a win, but I would do it again. I would bench. I also benched like the previous week. I benched Keaton Wynn at Philly, and I missed a shellacking. So I was pretty happy about that.
Philly actually, even though they have more star power than the Brewers, their offensive production this season is almost identical. Like
it is.
Like the OPS is very similar. The runs scored are quite similar, especially runs per game, which is better than runs scored, obviously. But like the runs per game is quite similar. Then the BABIP is also similar, so they're tied for second in the majors at 314. So and the home run to fly ball rate, the Brewers is a little higher, but the Phillies is still above average. So even though the Phillies, you look at the lineup and you're like, oh, of course the Phillies have a really good lineup. Their underlying stats are actually fairly similar to Milwaukee's. But I agree with you. Again, looking at the names and, the Philly has some guys, for example, even like they could be better. Nick Castellanos got off to an awful start this season. He's normally an important part of their lineup. So, Philly, I fear if it was the same pitcher and I could start him against Milwaukee or Philly, I would start him against Milwaukee.
Yeah, I look at Milwaukee's lineup and I'm like, oh, this bottom 5 is terrible. Jake Bauers is hitting 5th. Jake Bauers has an 802 OPS. Helps that he hit a grand slam yesterday to buttress that. Joey Ortiz is batting 6th. Joey Ortiz actually has 3 homers, which is more than I thought I'd see out of him this year. He's got an 825 OPS. Joey Ortiz is not supposed to be anything special. Sal Frelick. Okay, I'm sick and tired of Sal Frelick on my main event team. He stinks. He's got a 608 OPS right now. I mean, he's not helping me one single bit. Oliver Dunn has been very disappointing. And then Jackson Churio has also been kind of disappointing. In fact, not kind of disappointing, Fred. I don't have Churio, so I didn't really pay attention to how much he's been struggling. 207, 254, 322. Yikes.
Yeah, so definitely belongs at the bottom of that lineup, and belongs probably. I have one fantasy league, I think, where I still have him in the lineup, and I should probably look at taking him out. Actually, as a fantasy asset, him being on pace for maybe about 15 homers and a little over 20 steals, like then in a 15-team league, even with the bad batting average, maybe you can stomach him. But from a real baseball perspective, how long does he keep getting to play? With
Right.
an on-base percentage around 250. What's really propelling the Brewers lineup is that at the top of the lineup,
It's great.
Bryce Terang hasn't been great, but he's been very good. And then,
Mhm.
and as a spark plug, he's been good. But William Contreras is like out of his mind.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Yeah, and like I said, Adames has pitched really well, or played really well. Rhys Hoskins has a solid start. Yelich when he has been healthy.
Yeah.
It does feel like it. There's a lot of pressure on those players to continue because the bottom,
Right.
it
And
definitely
Hoskins
has
is
holes.
hurt, by the way. He's out of
That's right.
today's
That's right.
lineup with a hamstring injury that
Yeah.
second that yesterday.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really giving him credit for the regular lineup, not including Hoskins in that. But yeah, that's part of the problem, though. And that's the thing is, like, I just feel like they're kind of in trouble. Blake Perkins had a nice stretch, but he's since slumped and is now no longer playing that often. They're missing Joey Weimer. They're missing Garrett Mitchell. They're kind of forced to use some of these other guys too. Monasterio, I think, was playing yesterday, or no, he wasn't. He was on a different team. What am I talking about? No, it is Monasterio has been playing some here and there. Master Bono and Monasterio. I get those two mixed up all the time.
Yeah.
As one does.
But Monasterio, hasn't started in a while.
Yeah.
Are the Brewers the best team in the Central?
Sorry, I was looking at a comment from Yance. They are the best team in the NL Central, I think.
Better than the Cubs?
A little bit. A little bit.
I don't know if I think I might. So I think as constructed right now, I might like the Cubs a little better. Like just looking at the Brewers rotation with Bryce Wilson, Colin Ray, Joe Ross, and Robert Gasser all in it right now. Like that's pretty bad. But I will say the Brewers are a smart organization, and that lineup that you just went through has obvious holes that could be fixed in July.
Yep.
Like that's one thing I do like about them long term is the top 5 is good. It's easy to look at. Okay, if you guys add say 2 outfielders, and you don't need superstars. If you just add 2 competent outfielders in July, all of a sudden that that lineup looks way longer. A couple guys who can hit 6th, 7th. Kind of in there with Ortiz, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. If they get 3 outfielders, but even 2 would be fine. So it's got obvious goals. It could get better really fast
if they choose to do so. That's always the will they have the wherewithal? Will they have the gumption, the willingness to do so? That's in the past they haven't recently done that. Not to strong degrees. By the way, Yance, I get a bigger headset because I have a bigger head. I mean, it's not some sort of egalitarian thing here. It's just that it needs more support. That's all. But anyways, I think I want to think that this Brewers team always is smart enough to outpace our expectations, and thus
done it so far.
Think, yeah. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of headquarters after the Corbin Burns trade, after their off season. They lost their manager, but they're smart. And so they're going to outperform, I think, a little bit of that. So I think that's part of the answer to the Brewers. Before we move on to the next team that we want to review, a quick note here from our good friends at So Rare. Have you ever dreamed of stepping into the shoes of a general manager? I know I have, for sure. Welcome to So Rare. MLB, So Rare MLB, a groundbreaking fantasy baseball game where you call the shots. Take charge and make your managerial mark by collecting officially licensed digital player cards of your favorite MLB stars. These aren't just any cards. They're your ticket to compete for over $1 million in total cash rewards and other amazing prizes. Imagine winning VIP trips to the MLB All-Star 2024 game, or getting your hands on signed merchandise from the top MLB players. Here's how it works. Use your cards to set your lineup each game week. Real-world plays like hits, strikeouts, and homers will power your team's performance. Climb the leaderboards and snag weekly wins, from cash prizes to more cards and unforgettable experiences. But there's more. You can build an iconic collection of your favorite teams and players to unlock gameplay bonuses and exclusive rewards. The rarer the card, the higher your score. So like you're not going to get the Billy Ripken card there, by the way, but and the bigger your edge in competitions. And when you're ready to trade, the Sorare Marketplace offers a vibrant community of managers. Engage in live auctions, make instant buys, and trade cards peer-to-peer. Starting is absolutely free. That's true. You get like a set of cards. You usually get like 1 star among them, and hopefully you get like, a couple commons that turn into stars is the goal there. Draft your first team of common cards today and feel the thrill of competition as you climb the ranks to baseball mastery. What are you waiting for? Join Sorare MLB today. Transform your passion for baseball into a quest for glory and get rewarded for your baseball savvy. Sign up today with the link in the description and get 50% off your first pro cards up to $50. It's your passion rewarded. That's so rare. And we thank them for joining us as one of our key sponsors on the podcast there. Let's discuss the moribund Cincinnati Reds offense here. We don't, because we never talk Reds on this podcast, so we might as well do this now.
Before we get into the offense, you did say at the beginning that the Reds are finding new ways to win games. And if I wanted to lose games, sorry. And if I wanted to be ruthless, I would say that Alexis Diaz blowing the save, unfortunately, this year maybe is not a new way to lose games and I have him in many leagues, and he has like we're well into the season here, and the ERA is still, what was it, 6 something? I think it is. I don't have it up in front of me right now.
675.
675, and almost as many walks as strikeouts. And for a while, I was just blaming the first appearance of the year when he got shelled, but now we've got some other shellings recently.
Well, the thing about Diaz,
except one of them was a non-save. That was annoying. The 11.
Oh yeah, the Orioles game. But so Diaz had a really good stretch. He had got bombed an opening day, and then he went all the way until April 29th before his next earned run was allowed. Or no, he only allowed one against the Mets. But in that span, he was really good. In that span, he had a 10, like almost 11 inning stretch, 0.84 ERA, 0.75 WHIP. But then in his last 5 outings, it's been brutal. And it's been really awful. 17-18 ERA, 6. That's 3 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 7 runs, 6 walks, and a hit by pitch. That was last night. Started the inning off with a hit by pitch, just brutal. And the Reds are just like they're gasping for air right now. And to blow that lead against the Diamondbacks the way they did, just awful, just so tough. I am now officially worried. This is the first time I've been worried about Diaz. Before that, I was just like, okay, he went through a stretch. Even like the Baltimore game, it was one of those, okay, he hadn't pitched in like 6 days, and they threw him into a non-save situation there. In fact, it was a non-competitive situation. It was a get work outing, and he got worked all right. And I thought, okay, he's fine. In fact, he pitched okay the next 2 outings against the Giants. But yesterday was just brutal.
Yeah, and like you said, teams like the Reds and my Blue Jays are in the same boat. Teams like the Reds who are underachieving, like you need every win. Like when your closer blows it, when you're the Brewers and your closer blows it, and you're like, whatever, we're in first place in the division. Like this is going to happen sometimes. But when you're the Reds, or like I said, my Blue Jays, when it's happened this year, like because you're just hanging on. Like the Reds have legitimately won 1 of their last 10 games. So that's just a blown save at the worst time. I don't actually fear Diaz losing his job. I know we're here to talk about the Reds offense, but I don't actually right now totally fear him losing his job. I think it's going to take a little more than this.
Yeah.
Because there are not a lot of obvious alternatives.
That's just the point. And Ryan Roof made that point on the Sirius XM show today when we had him on the show. Ryan does our closer grid and closer encounters. And that was just exactly the point. Who's going to step in? They all have the same problem too. Sims gives up walks and homers. Pagan gives up walks and homers. Not as many walks, but there's just not. Fernando Cruz strikes out a ton of guys, but he also walks a ton of guys because he dares you to swing and miss at balls out of the zone, and so that's what happens. Buck Farmer's like the only reliever that's pitching well right now for the Reds. So yeah, but then again, I mean the depth of Diaz's problems, if he, it's the command. Even like when he got the save a little bit on against the Giants, he was like, he'd start off 0-2 and get to 3-2 with every hitter. You could kind of see this sort of thing coming a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like I said, like I think, like you said, the other pitchers have similar problems. He's their closer. He might even be a buy low. Like when I write my trade articles, like another one coming out tomorrow, he's not in it, but I could even see him being a buy low because maybe the Diaz owner is so frustrated.
Yeah. Maybe
that if I could get him significant discount, right? And
and
if he turns to, I am worried, but that doesn't mean you can't buy low on him or try to buy low on him.
Right.
Yeah.
But That's delaying the whole conversation about the Reds' moribund offense.
Which is the real problem with the Reds. Yes.
Yeah, it is the real problem. And the real problem is that key players aren't available and other key players aren't hitting. Matt McClain, losing him was just a killer for this team. Such a good all-around player. And he hasn't, obviously hasn't played an inning this year and won't for a while. They're talking hopefully August. Hopefully it'll matter when he comes back. Noelvi Marte has the 80-game suspension. What are we, like halfway through that still?
Yeah.
Christian Encarnacion Strand first stunk. Now he's hurt, out long term.
That's a killer. That one was a killer because the other guys were gone. Like McClain was gone, like Marte was gone, but everyone said the deck is clear now. Encarnacion Strand, here we go. Like this is full breakout. He's got no competition now for playing time.
Mm-hmm.
But he was completely unable to take it. It was really surprising to me because this is someone who's hit on his way up, and then even last year hit well for the Reds. I did not see this coming. I don't think anyone did. I think we felt like it was either going to be Encarnacion Strand breakout or Encarnacion Strand limited playing time because of a roster logjam. Neither of those things have happened.
No, and I feel like he was pressing from day one.
Yeah.
He got that walk-off homer against the Nats in his last at-bat of the series. And okay, here we go. He's finally going to relax a little bit here. No, never really happened that way. So
speaking of pressing from day one, Heimer Candelario got off to an abysmal start. We're talking about a guy who's just kind of like a bit of I don't know. I kind of think of him as a bit of a metronome of just average production, and he got off to a brutal start. Has come back a bit. Is coming back a bit now.
He has. But it's really problematic though. The start they got off to, TJ Friedel's got a second major injury already with a thumb injury this time after hurting his wrist. I mean, that's two hand injuries. Can you imagine how much it's going to impact his bat? I think it might when he comes back. And his bat was already fluky to begin with. If you look at the hard hit data from last year, he outperformed by a big mile, and a big mile. What does that even mean? Maybe it's like Canadian. I was trying to convert into Canadian for you.
We don't have those. Mile, kilometers are smaller. So
yes. Yeah.
The other one that people aren't really talking about because he built up so much goodwill in April is that Ellie has not hit well at all in May. He still stole 7 bases this month, which has helped his fantasy value a lot, but his OPS this month's in the 600s. He hasn't been the big spark plug this month that he was in April. I'm sure it's only been a couple weeks. I'm not blaming Ellie for the fact that the Reds are where they are in offense, 26th in overall OPS, but Ellie has slowed down a lot this month. So is this a team that you stream against?
Yes, 100% yes.
On the road only?
I'm pulling up the splits right now. I wanted to see because I think the Reds at home have been hideous, actually.
But does that mean that they'll be hideous still? You know what I mean? Or did you miss the luck window of Reds on the? I don't know. This is the whole point of the topic, I guess.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find them at home.
I'm trying to beat you to it here. I'm using Fangraphs.
You did not. I've got it 23rd in baseball at home. So basically the same. A little worse on the road, basically the same.
Yeah, that's not good.
Actually, 23rd at home, 23rd on the road in baseball.
So they're bad all around. Is basically what you're trying to tell me.
They don't have a lot of aces. They don't have a lot of aces too to make you think I don't want to go up against that guy.
Right.
I would go up against their starters in general. So yeah. So maybe not I might give them a little more. Actually, no, not much. I give them a little more credit maybe than where they're ranked, but not much.
No, I don't. I don't see much help coming either, and that's the real problem. Yep. I mean, they've eviscerated all their depth. I think that's the thing that's really kind of stunk is they're like, oh, how are they going to fit everybody in? Now the Reds are looking for Mike Ford for relief. I mean, and he actually has provided some. Is the funny thing, but they even added Santiago Espinal as kind of a depth piece when they've had all their injuries. He's hitting 189.
That was not going to help your lineup. I could have told you that as a Jays fan. That was not going to help your lineup.
But he's underperformed even the low expectations of what he did with the Jays. He's got a 489 OPS. I know it's not.
He is not a major league quality. In my opinion, he is not. He got hot a little bit at the start of his Jays career. He's not a major league quality hitter. He is a nice fielder. He is a hard worker. He is not a major league quality hitter. But you're right. He has even underperformed the poor results he had the last couple of years in Toronto. Will Benson, absolutely awful.
I was just going to mention Will Benson.
Yeah, Jake
How many
Fraley's been
strikeouts
fine.
does Will Benson have this year?
All of them. He has 60 strikeouts in
you're looking at it.
Yeah, in 148 plate appearances. So
60 strikeouts already
in 148 plate appearances. Like, forget striking out 1/3 of the time. Like, he is well above that. So
yes,
yeah, Jake Fraley's
that's
been
a
fine.
precise mathematical measure
well
there, right up there with the big mile.
Anyways, yeah, I agree. I don't think
40.5%.
I think small bounce back. Like, maybe they're not the 26th best offense in baseball like they have been, but maybe they're only like 20th.
Yeah. But I just don't see help on the way, and that's the thing that bothers me too. Marte is help, but it's a month. We're still over a month away on him.
Yeah.
Maybe Reese Hines gets the call at some point in time. Reese Hines at AAA right now is not hitting very well, so never mind.
Okay.
661 OPS at AAA so far. So
the help would just be guys like Ellie getting back on track. Benson can be better than this. Jonathan India can be better than this. So it would be just a few guy bounce backs. But again, that only pulls them up to being probably still an average to below average lineup.
Right. And it's kind of like Rockies being better at home than on the road. That's what they could aspire to do right now.
I don't want to give up on this year for the Reds, but because it's way too early for that. But I wonder if this is a bit of a, they have so many good young players. Like, maybe it's a bit of just a refocusing year. I don't know, where you don't actually make the playoffs, but it doesn't mean the future is not just as bright. You just wait for McLean to be back next year, a full year at a Marte next year. You know what I mean? Like, a little more development for Ellie. Guys like Lodolo continue to gain experience, Hunter Green, and maybe next year is more the year that I don't know. Maybe I don't want to say
this is why I'm mad that they didn't go in last year.
Right.
Because you don't get to choose when your injury luck is good. Nope. You don't get to choose when, like, the Cardinals are terrible, the Brewers are just mediocre, and the Cubs falling apart. The Reds had a prime opportunity, and they added one lefty specialist reliever in Sam Moll, and that's it. Uncle Ted asks, who wins more games, Reds or Nats? I'm going to say Nats right now. I'm a self-hating Reds fan right now. But yeah,
that's a good one. I'll say Reds.
All right. Who's the one last Reds question, and we'll move on.
I'm changing my mind already. I was thinking some of the prospects the Nats can bring up.
Yep. So James Wood is this close.
Yeah.
Okay. So last week we did Godfather offers. Who on the Reds is a player that could be peddled in the case of a Godfather offer?
Where the Reds get a Godfather offer to trade him away?
Yeah. Because they're 17-24, tied for last in the division.
I feel like they can't trade any of the pitchers.
Okay.
Do you agree? Because I just don't think organizationally they have the depth to take a Nick Lodolo or Hunter Green. I don't think they get a Godfather offer for one of those guys.
Spencer Steer, maybe?
That was my guy. That's my guy. But I just don't know if you get a Godfather offer for Spencer Steer. But that would probably be my guy. Like, he's on this roster. Like, he's a little bit older than some of the other prospects, like than Ellie and McLean and stuff like that. So you're not getting a Godfather offer for Jonathan India.
No.
If Alexis Diaz got back on track, I guess you could get a sizable offer for him.
Yeah. Steer is under
club. I guess Steer.
Yeah. And when we say when it's said that he's on a 1-year deal, of course he's on a 1-year deal because he doesn't have service time yet. So he'll be on a series of 1-year deals for it. The question is how many more years of that, and the answer is plenty. He's not even arbitration eligible yet.
Yeah.
He's not reaching free agency or anything like that.
They can get a decent amount for him. Yep.
This is like you're not getting 1 year of Steer is my point. You're getting 4 years of Steer. So which makes it would have to be a Godfather offer to get him. And he's raised his profile since being acquired by the Reds. That was in the Tyler Mahle deal. And what a good deal that was for the Reds. But you're hoping they don't have to do that again. You want them to add on, not peel off. And wait for the next wave. No, let's do this wave still. But the guy, and just for people who didn't catch last week, the Godfather offer is the offer they can't turn down. The offer, we feel like the Marlins did get a Godfather offer from the Padres last week on the Luis Arias deal. And Arias, of course, has had 2 game-winning hits already, so shows what I know. But at the same time, it's like, okay, and the Marlins in the position they were had to listen to offers. They got one that seemed like they couldn't refuse. This is the sort of thing like who on the Reds would be fetching such an offer. So that's what we're going for there. We're going to go talk about a little bit about the Cardinals, the A's still, and the Mariners, our teams we're going to discuss coming up next. But first, let's talk a little Prize Picks here. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You just pick more or less on 2-player stats and watch the winnings roll in. And they have a lot of special projections sometimes. Like, for instance, because it's WNBA's season opener tonight, they got a Caitlin Clark special, which is not a slam dunk because she doesn't slam dunk. But you know what? I should probably use but at least I got the right sport. But it's an obvious one. It's half a point. And then you kind of pair that with pair or triple that with other projections for your selection there. You can also use the RotoWire picks tool as other ones there. The one I like a little bit there is Quinn Priester is pitching for the Pirates today. I like William Contreras to hit the more than 7.5 points in the fantasy score. If you like to go runs, you go more than a half a run on that as well. I'd like to pick against Priester right now. So that's kind of what I'm recommending as far as that goes. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app today and use code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks. All right. Thanks to Prize Picks for their sponsorship. Also, we're on the Blue Wire Network. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for Blue Wire for hosting all of our podcasts. We do appreciate it there. Let's talk about the Seattle Mariners. I want to jump out of the NL Central just for a moment there because, hey, got to kind of surf and turf here a little bit. The Mariners are on a roll right now. They're playing good ball, absent that one series in Minnesota where they really did struggle. But I think 19-11 of their last 30. But, they are striking out a ton. They're whiffing as a team, Fred, 28.3% of the time. That's like a struggling hitter. They're averaging like a really high strikeout hitter. As a team, 28.3%. That is crazy.
Where did the Reds rank in strikeouts? Or sorry, the Mariners rank in strikeouts last season? Do you want to guess?
I don't want to guess.
I wouldn't have got this right. Second.
Okay.
They were second most behind the Twins.
So this is not a surprise.
So we shouldn't be surprised with the fact that they're striking out this much. And this does matter. Like when we're talking about a Reds team that has a below average offense as far as both OPS and runs scored. So they're not doing damage. If they're doing damage and striking out, then you'd be like, risk reward. Like, what if I get lit up? Oh, but what if I get 8 strikeouts? But they're not doing that much damage. So I would say the Reds have sneakily become a decent team.
Mariners, you mean?
Sorry, the Mariners. I keep saying Reds
because I know it's on your brain from our last.
Got it in my head. They sneakily become that. Now, there's one reason that I would avoid streaming against the Mariners, and it's that their starting pitchers are so good that I feel like my win potential is just okay. Right? Like,
yeah,
there's a reason that the Mariners are winning their division.
Right. There's a reason why they're 19-11 in the last 30. I mean, they're overcoming. Right. And a lot of this is Julio Rodriguez is off to a terrible start.
Yep.
That's the starting point to this discussion. Let's see, as a team, like their WOBA is thoroughly mid. It's 21. It's even slightly below mid. As the kids might say, my kids at least would say, their WRC plus is almost the exact median. It's 99. They're not scoring a lot of runs. They do hit very mid power too. Okay, they do everything just average. They have 14th in walks and 16th in power. Yeah, they're just straight middle of the pack.
And when you look at the lineup, like Julio should be way better than this, and he probably will be at some point. I have seen games recently where he shows signs, but beyond that, like, yeah, they are pretty mid. Like, who's their second best hitter? Who's the second best hitter on this team? Like Cal
Rojas.
Raleigh.
Josh Rojas is awesome.
Josh Rojas, yeah,
he's not supposed to be their second best hitter, mind you. But
I think I was going to say Cal Raleigh, who's a catcher who doesn't hit for average, like, but could hit 30 home runs. Like, it's not good. Mitch Haniger, he's probably gonna hurt at some point, and he's just an okay hitter. Mitch Garver's been a massive disappointment.
So has Jorge Polanco.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they profiled as a lineup that maybe would just not be awesome, but just have a lot of average hitters that could just
Hmm.
churn its way through and get their 4 or 5 runs a game. But with guys like Polanco and Garver, Luke Raley's been a total zero. He got a homer and a
No,
steal last night, but prior to that,
Rayleigh has sneakily been a little bit better than you think
oh,
lately.
okay, okay,
Lately,
all
he's
right, maybe he's starting to turn things around. He had an awful start to the
yeah,
season.
horrific start, and a 3 to 24 walk to K rate means he is not been good overall. I'm just saying lately he's been better, but he's also a platoon bat.
Yep.
He's never going to face a lefty, and well, he shouldn't. But that's
Yeah.
kind of the thing there.
So I feel like you can stream against. So this is actually a philosophical discussion. Is like, do you prioritize win potential or strikeouts when streaming? You should probably prioritize. I guess you should prioritize strikeouts because the wins are so fickle,
Yeah,
right? So. So I think this is a pretty good team to stream against. Your odds of getting lit up are not that high, and then your odds of getting a decent strikeout total are pretty good. And
yeah.
again, wins like the gap between starting pitcher wins on a Mariners team that's lost 19 games and let's say like a really bad team like the Angels have lost 27 games, eight, so it's 8 more times that the team's beaten them, but the starting pitchers aren't getting all those wins. So maybe over the course of the season so far, starting pitchers have gotten maybe 4 more wins against the Angels and the Mariners.
Hmm.
Does that really factor into, maybe it's not even that many, does that really factor that much into your decision making on a starter, or should you trend more towards getting the strikeouts?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think we do try to look for the wins when we talk about
Yeah,
streaming, and I think we
yeah,
probably should talk about strikeouts more.
hmm,
I think at least, and I'm sure there are good analysts out there that do that. I think that might be a failing of mine is I don't look at that as much. Is just like if I'm looking for stolen bases, I look for the player and not necessarily the opponent, the catcher. Like
hmm,
I should be looking for the Mets on the schedule every single week if I'm looking at gain and stolen bases because they can't stop anybody. But I don't do that. Especially maybe I don't do that now. Maybe I do it later in the season. I do a little bit more of that when the categories where how I'm doing in categories starts to kind of firm up a little bit more, and I'm a little bit more aware of that. Like right now, how much do you look at like, oh, I'm 14th in stolen bases. I got to start getting more, unless it are and especially if it's not extreme, like unless you're off to if you're off to a mid start, how much are you analyzing the categories this time in the season?
yeah. Only somewhat, because I don't want to get too carried away with
Hmm.
chasing categories, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, I've only made up ground a little bit in steals, and I've lost a bunch of points in RBIs because I've had Dorian Blanco in my lineup the last couple of weeks, just trying to get a
Hmm.
few more steals. So I'd say not too much, but I do think you got to be aware of it.
Yeah. I do think though, like the strikeout aspect there, I should be more aware of that. And not just more aware of that, but targeting more of that.
Hmm.
And I should probably, notice like who these teams are playing every single week when I'm trying to find my streamers and maybe start to look a week and a half, 2 weeks in
Yeah.
advance a little bit more too.
Yeah, for sure. For example, I can give you a good example. Alec Marsh was maybe an underrated streamer this week. We'll see how he does tomorrow, but he's someone who is pretty available,
Yep.
and has one start against Seattle. We'll see. Again, we'll see how he goes, but
I did pick him
maybe
up in a league. Yep.
there you go. Yeah, Michael Walker was floating around in some 12s, and the odd 15. I saw him in one of my 15s. So, but he was also floating around some 12s. Again, he starts against the Mariners today. These are maybe ones that aren't quite as obvious because we think of the Mariners as probably a postseason team. So I don't stream against them. But yeah, with the strikeouts, it's maybe not a bad idea.
Let's talk numbers here. When we're looking for teams and their strikeout percentage, what's a good number? What's a bad number? Like, what's the zone where we're like, oh yeah. I mean, obviously the Mariners at 28.3%. Yeah, of course. But like, how far do you have to dip before you say, they don't strike out that much? Is it like 23%, 22%? What number are we at there where it's like, okay, it's not that many strikeouts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just looking at the distribution of data, I'd say about 25%. So, for example, we've got
That's only 5 teams then.
I know, but those are the outliers. Like the other one, like once we hit like from 24% down to 20% is almost the whole league. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably looking at like 25% and then under 20. Like as far as like a noticeable, it's not that simple, but because obviously the pitcher skill set and his own ability to generate strikeouts is still the most important factor. Like
Yeah.
if you can't generate strikeouts, you're still not going to strike out the Mariners
Right.
that often. Like it's unlikely. So I would say, yeah, I would say I'm probably looking at 25. A bit like if I was rounding it, about 25 or more. Yes, that matters, and about 20 or less. Yes, that matters, and then in between is pretty noisy because the teams can move around in that pretty quickly.
Here are the 5 teams that strike out the most. Seattle at 28.3%, Colorado 26%, 26.0, Boston 25.9, Cincinnati 25.5, and Oakland at 25.4%. Meanwhile, Houston, paltry 16.8%. They're an extreme outlier on the other side of things. And they have been for years, by the way, Fred. And this is why they still have a good offense. They can't get anybody out, but they've got a good offense at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So Houston's a team. It's not one of the number one teams to avoid, and I try to really avoid using pitchers against them unless they're really strong pitchers, because Houston's been not an amazing lineup so far. They could be better than they've been so far. They're 5th in OPS in baseball. They're kind of in a group of teams, kind of ranging from about 2nd to 7th, where they could bounce around over a couple nights. But the lack of strikeout potential against them, it really matters, even though, like you said, they haven't pitched well, so that it maybe helps your win potential a little bit. But I really try to avoid them. In fact, I would avoid Houston, for example. Now bringing this full circle, I think I would avoid Houston more. I definitely avoid them more than Milwaukee, and I would probably avoid them more than Philadelphia.
Yeah,
because of the low strikeout potential. Like Philadelphia's more of a regular team as far as strikeout rate, and Milwaukee as well. So yeah, I would. Houston's one of my main teams to avoid.
Yeah.
And Boston becomes a little more, when you look at that strikeout rate, a little more of a sneaky target. And their offense has been slightly above average, not good. So I usually think like you don't want to use pitchers against Boston. Like I'm a little more. I should be a little more open to that.
Yeah, maybe so. Well,
Yeah.
at least certainly Boston on the road. I mean, I guess that's the trade-off. It's like strikeouts are amazing, but they're not necessarily the be-all, end-all. I mean, the fact is, you get with the Mariners, you get the strikeouts, and you often don't get the damage when they do connect. And I think that's the thing. And same thing with Cincinnati right now. I mean, they're not hitting for any power at all right now. It's really sad to see. Colorado has got a 130 ISO as a team. That's really bad. And they play in Coors Field, for crying out loud.
Colorado is all the bad things. Yeah. They have the highest BABIP. They've had a crummy offense with the highest BABIP in baseball, which is not surprising when they play Coors. But
yeah. Although I have to say, I've gone in on them a lot this year, and they've deserved it. But they've won 5 in a row. The Pace-Eating Rockies have won 5 in a row, but they're 13-28. So just wrap your head around that for a second. There, won 5 in a row, and yet 13-28. They're still Pace-Eaters. But anyways, let's talk about another team here. Let's talk about the Oakland A's, the swinging A's. Is this a league average offense? Maybe even slightly better?
I don't think so. I really don't. I know they've been a league average offense. Like they're 16th in baseball and OPS. In runs scored, they're down at 20th, but they're not far off some of the teams. Like they could quickly move up a couple more good games, but they really, I feel like are on a heater the last couple of weeks. They strike out a lot. They're one of the 5 teams with 25% or more in strikeouts, and just the eyeball test of the lineup. Like I'm really trying to not make that my sole test of a lineup, but it has to be a factor that Brent Rooker's off to a great start. Full credit to him. Shea Langoliers every once in a while just has like an absolutely mammoth game, but I don't think this is a lineup to avoid at all. In fact, I think I still need to target them.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way, but the home run factor is kind of crazy. Just how much power they've hit for.
Yep.
And the other thing is, despite the possibility of getting hurt, you also still can get wins because their pitching still is pretty darn bad. And it's gotten worse now that Paul Blackburn's on the IL.
Yep, absolutely. That's part. And also their pitching has been like a little better than we thought. It's 22nd in baseball in ERA. So I thought they'd be in the bottom 2 or 3. So it's been a little better than we thought, but I still feel like this is probably like the high water mark for the pitching. Like I feel like the 4.38 ERA in a month is going to be 450 or 455 and etc.
Yeah.
and kind of settle in the high fours. Instead, we'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'm not giving the A's enough credit, but I really don't think this is a team that's like, oh, they're sneaky good, and people didn't see them coming. I don't see, or they've got prospects on the fringe, or sorry, on the verge of. I don't
But
think that
they did just get Zach Geloff back
They
today.
did. Yeah.
The metrics on them: WRC plus of 102, WOBA of 306 puts them firmly in the middle at 17th. This is an average offense so far.
Yep.
Their ISO is actually 4th in baseball, 167. Brent Rooker has something to do with that. Brett Harris had his game where he had 2 homers in one game. I'm not convinced he's a thing, but Shea Langoliers is above average. He is actually a really legitimate baseball player. So, I mean, you've got some pieces on this team that are actually kind of interesting. I think I think it'll collapse under its own weight eventually. Next year, though, if they play in Sacramento, think about this for keeper leagues. Hold on to Rooker in a keeper league. Hold on to Geloff for a keeper league, because you're going to get a ballpark next year in Sacramento that is going to be a bandbox. They're going to be playing in a much friendlier hitter ballpark than what they're currently in next year. Now, avoid their pitchers not named Mason Miller.
It's a really good point, though. Yeah, that's actually a really good point for keeper leagues. I'm not sure if I'm ready to say that Shea Langoliers is in his 259 on base percentage are
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
He's got a 3 homer game, and then he's got another stretch where he hit 3 homers in 4 games. Outside of that, he's been really bad. And then
there you go, using facts on me there.
I don't know. I just not
How
convinced.
dare you?
He's part of that this offense is over their skis right now. But you're
Okay.
right. The keeper league thing is a really good point. I think for
Soderstrom is
this year,
interesting
for
too,
them,
by the way.
pardon me. Sorry.
Soderstrom is interesting.
Yeah.
I was kind of in on Toro and Blade for this particular week because they had 7 games. But yeah, you're right.
Guys like Toro and Blade hit high in the lineup, and they're so when the schedule is favorable for them. I think for them to hold this ranking of being like a top 20 lineup, they'll have to have some prospects come up and augment it. Some regression that will come to some of the players in it right now, and I just don't see those guys coming.
Yeah. By the way, I think they sent down Lawrence Butler today. I need to confirm that, but if you're looking for, they did send him down today. So he was, I guess it really doesn't affect us too much. I was thinking he might be an interesting stolen base source, but he only has 3 this year. I guess when you're hitting 170 and you got a 537 OPS, you don't have an opportunity to really run that much. So the swinging A's are also the swinging missing A's too. So there is that. Strikeout wise, they're 5th in baseball at strikeout percentage at 25.4%. 5th worst, that is. So not 5th best.
Would you drop Esteury Ruiz, by the way? Who's on their roster right now? Would you drop Esteury Ruiz?
How much is he playing? I don't know. I don't have him.
He's not. He just got called back up. Actually, wait. He's
getting
up
called up
tomorrow. He's been gone. He's been he's been up since April 15th.
Yeah, he's been up for a while now.
But he's not playing much.
No, he isn't playing that much.
But nobody's dropping him. But no, and the reason I asked this, if someone's listening, is like, why would you want to talk about it? Nobody's dropping him. Like, I'm not seeing him hit my waiver wire. He has 4 steals.
In the last 21 days,
4 steals, and he's not playing.
Well, in the last 21 days, he's got a 377 OPS. I think he came back with the boom the first day he was back, and then since then, I don't think he's done anything at all.
Would you drop him?
Yeah,
he's not playing and he's not stealing. I know everyone.
I would take Darian Blanco over Esteury Ruiz right now.
Yeah, which you could have done for not very much on Sunday. Like I said, I feel like no one's dropping him. Everyone's holding in hopes that all of a sudden they start playing him. They're not playing him. Like, they don't seem to want to play him. The playing time's there. He's not getting it.
Yep. Kind of makes me feel a little silly about being outraged about his send down after the first weekend of play. But here we are. All right, let's talk a little Pittsburgh. Well, we talked Pittsburgh a lot last week with the Paul Skeens thing and all that. I'm going to hold off on Pittsburgh. We can talk about them next time. So let's beat another horse instead and talk about St. Louis, because we haven't talked about St. Louis in at least 12 minutes. They did rally against the Angels yesterday. You asked for miracles, I give you the Angels bullpen. But is this offense really as bad as it's shown?
I think it's going to come around. I do. I think they're one of the offenses that one of the reasons that I put together this idea for today. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're going to come around. I don't know. Again, the eyeball test. You see Goldschmidt, you see Arenado. I don't think they're totally washed up as bad as they've been so far. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
they're veterans who are off to slow starts. I think Lars Nootbaar can be better than he's been so far. I think Nolan Gorman can be better than he's been so far. I'm sure Brendan Donovan can be better than he's been so far. I'm not saying these guys that I just named are all potential all stars, but I do think this lineup can be better than it has been.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, I think it starts with Goldschmidt. I think that it starts and ends with Goldschmidt. If they don't get him going, I have a hard time seeing them turn it around because he's like one of the better parts of this lineup and an integral part of this lineup,
Yep.
and a part
it has to be. Yeah.
And a non-movable part too. They're going to just keep rolling him out. There's no way they're benching him. They're not trading him. You can't be traded. I mean, anybody can be traded with a certain amount of creativity, but it's highly unlikely. But
yeah.
I think him doing his thing affects how later batters in the lineup are pitched to. I think it all stems from him. That said,
sorry, go ahead.
That said, I look at this depth chart. I look at their roster. I see Matt Carpenter still as the DH, and he's like 7,000 years old. As someone who's older than him, he's not that old, but I'm underwhelmed. Losing Contreras was a big blow. Even that Herrera is a pretty decent player, but they were trying to use both Herrera and Contreras at the same time. That's how much they needed offensive help. Like Contreras was the DH a lot. You take that away there. I mean, now you see Matt Carpenter starting at DH. That's the consequence there. Their outfield is just a disaster. And it's been a disaster all season long. Lars Nootbaar has had his kind of some moments here and there. But at the end of the day, he's still 196, 311, 343. That's not getting it done.
No.
Burleson's kind of in the same sort of boat. 679 OPS. Dylan Carlson's back now, but he's not even playing that much. And still looking for his first hit since coming back. He came back on May 5th, and Dylan Carlson is 0 for 17 so far. So this just shows it's contagious.
It certainly is, and I do agree with you that Goldschmidt is the linchpin here. I thought about in fantasy recommending him as a buy low. I can tell you this: there is no statistical reason for me to label him a buy low. He is a mess. Like he's striking
leap
out.
Of faith, absolutely.
That's it. It's just he can't be this bad. That would be I wouldn't be able to write a paragraph in an article for why he's a buy low. It would just say he's been an all-star so many times. He was even a good player last year. We haven't seen anything like this as far as his strikeout rate goes. So unless you think he just fell off a cliff this season from a skills perspective and he can't come back, then he's a buy low. But there's nothing from a statistical perspective this season to say, like, come on, this guy's he's even the stats do say, the StatCast stat and stuff says he's underachieved, but not to the point where, where you'd really target him as a buy low. So yeah, it would just be a common sense of like Paul Goldschmidt can't get this bad this quickly.
Yeah, surely he can't be this bad this quickly. Yes, he is, and don't call me Shirley.
Don't call me Shirley. Yeah. So, but I do think he will. Like I said, I do think he'll bounce back to a degree. I would buy low on him, even though I can't present a statistical argument. And I think I'd buy low on Arenado too, who only has 3 homers so far. So I think he'll bounce back from a power perspective a bit. But again, not from a statistical basis, just from I don't think that Nolan Arenado at his age, having turned 33 recently, at 33, I don't think that a guy who's hit 34, 30, and 26 homers the last 3 years is suddenly like a 14 homer player.
But it happens all the time.
It does. It does happen. So, but I would buy low on him. I think it's worth the shot. I think it's worth the risk in buying low on him, even though this year the stats say, yes, he is bad.
They're just hemorrhaging for power, though. I mean, they need power so badly. Team ISO right now, it's 120. They're as bad as Miami, and only the White Sox are worse. Although Eloy homered today so far for the White Sox, so that's that gap's gonna narrow a little bit.
I know as a Reds fan, you're not feeling very sorry for them, but
we got our own house to worry about.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. I was trying to decide out of them, the Reds, in Pittsburgh. One of them will probably well, maybe not, but one of them will probably, which one I was trying to think which one is most likely to climb into the race. They're all more than 5 games out, but none of them are 10 games out in the division. Like I was trying to decide which one I think is most likely to climb back in the race. We kind of already said that it's probably not the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, but it's probably not the Reds. So it was debating. I think it probably is the Cardinals. I don't know if it'll happen, but I think it's probably them.
And one of the things I'm noticing is there's not a whole lot of hitting help on the way in a lot of these teams. Like, other than the Orioles, who has like hitters in the minor leagues where you're like, oh, I can't wait for him to get called up?
That's right. And I don't know if you read the Ken Rosenthal article recently at The Athletic about why hitters are we're seeing hitters struggle coming up from AAA this season. Kyle Manzardo, for example, just in the last week.
Yeah.
Like guys coming up from AAA, they're hitting 300 with power in AAA. So you think they're going to come up to the majors and do okay, and then they're not doing okay. So
Jackson Holiday.
Right. Yes.
Heston Kjerstad, except he never got a chance to play.
So there's a big picture discussion there of like, are we spending too much fab on hitters right now, these prospect hitters? By the way, Colton Cowser who I know you were excited about in April, has really, really cooled off.
I'm fully aware of that because my main event team has taken a turn south. Like I have like 10 slumpers among my 14 hitting spots. I feel like right now on that team, it's every night. It's just this dreary drudgery night there. And it's painful to watch. If Ryan Jeffers isn't playing, then I'm not hitting. Basically, it's come to that. Ryan Jeffers is like my one good hitting draft pick. Makes me want, and it's not just me. I know it's not just me, but I know sometimes it feels like it's just me when your team is in a slump. But then again, I look at like the Blue Jays. I look at the Rays aren't hitting for very much. Like Randy Arozarena still hasn't turned it around yet. I know he had a homer over the weekend, but he's still like overall not doing much. You look at Corbin Carroll still hasn't turned it around that much. Had that one big game in Cincinnati last week. You're like, okay, he's got some power. The shoulder is fine. And then he went one for his next 16. It keeps going like that.
Yeah. There seems to be no relief in sight.
Yeah. Who leads the league? By the way, we mentioned the Cardinals in isolated slugging average. The ISO. I can't even talk today. Who leads Major League Baseball in ISO? And it's not even close. Isolated power. It's slugging minus average, basically.
Who leads Major League Baseball in ISO?
The team, by a team.
Oh, the team.
Team.
Baltimore.
Yes. It's not even close.
Wow. I didn't think I would.
195 for Baltimore, 179 for the Dodgers. I would have thought it was the Dodgers.
The reason I picked Baltimore is I knew they led the majors in homers. So, and I didn't think that they had a ton of high average hitters. So,
and they've only played 40 games and they still lead baseball in homers. Like the Dodgers have played 43 games because they had the Korea series.
But you can't hit home runs in Baltimore because of the fences. So what's going on?
Baltimore. Well, you can still hit it to right. You
can also just be really good baseball players.
Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman answer that question for you, basically.
Yeah, and maybe the park doesn't help you with home runs, but you hit them anyways. So
and again, Gunner's hitting him to right field.
For
and
sure.
Rutschman's hitting a lot of them to right field. And every time I look up, I'm like, okay, that could have been me. Instead, I have Francisco Lindor with that one pitch final out today against the Phillies. Thanks there. In fairness, he had 2 hard hit balls where he got no luck at all against Nola today. Nola was also awesome today. So that's it. Before we sign off, I wanted to, you mentioned this on a tweet. I wanted to talk about it here. We've talked about all the hitting struggles and all that, yet you look at the waiver wire, there should be copious streaming options, yet you're finding them wanting.
So I wouldn't say I'm finding them wanting every week. I just found them definitely wanting this week.
Okay.
So actually that's the discussion is, are they wanting, or was just this just a bad week for them? And I think the answer is the latter. I think this week we just had like Corbin Burns is a 2-start this week. Bybee's a 2-start who's just rostered everywhere. Not that Bybee's been awesome this year.
No, he hasn't. I'm firmly aware of that. And he's better, but though he's better against good teams. It's weird. It's so weird.
Yamamoto Imanaga, right? Who both pitched last night. So Kirby pitched last night. So there's just Eflin. There was a bunch Barrios who are off to good starts.
So
You're
is it
not getting
like high in the
it
rotation
was
guys
today
getting
was
2
high low.
starts?
This week was high low. There just weren't number 3-4 types, and then there was just all these like Matt Mannings, Arrighetti from the Astros, like just Jose Soriano if you want to dip into that, Colin Ray, like just Ross Stripling.
Yeah, but sometimes you find those are supposed to be your diamonds in the rough sometimes. So Matt Manning was a common pickup this week. I thought that he was like my favorite of the 2 starters. My favorite overall was Gasser. I went after him a lot, but he only got 1 start this week. And he gets 1 start next week, but they're both good starts. So that's why I kind of wanted to go after that there. But going back to that though, so Matt Manning was just okay against the Marlins. Gave up a good number of hits. He gave up 3 runs in 5 2/3, I think. Got you some Ks, didn't kill you, but he wasn't. That was supposed to be the good start, and that's the frustrating thing.
Yeah, my favorites this week were Trevor Williams and Chris Paddock.
Okay.
And they were both pretty available. Like even in my 15s, I think Trevor Williams was in all of them. My thought on Trevor Williams was he's pitched way over his head this year. That is totally true. And the second start is at the Phillies. That's really bad. But maybe he doesn't get that start. We'll see because it's a Sunday. But he definitely got the today against the White Sox, which I think is going on as we're recording.
It is, and it's in the bottom of the 4th. The White Sox are ahead 1-0 on an Eloy homer. It is the most Trevor Williams line ever, though. 1 run over 3 innings, 2 hits, no walks, but no Ks.
There you go. Yeah, and the Chris Paddock is was an interesting one. He wasn't available in all my leagues, but he was available in some of them. It is important at this time of year to break down where the stats came from. Like he went into this week with a 434 area and a 150 whip, but he had that awful start at Baltimore where he gave up 9 runs. And everything else has been either okay or good. Like he had 7 starts this year, 5 of them with 2 runs or less. Now short starts, some of them didn't even get to 5 or just barely got to 5 innings. He's not awesome, but it's
28 to 3 K to walk in the last 4 starts. Though.
Yeah. So 38 to 7 on the season, even leaving in the disastrous start. So I thought he was an interesting one.
Even in that stretch, he got the win against the Angels. He went 5 innings in that one, 8 hits and a walk and only 2 Ks, 4 runs. But fortunately for him, the Twins scored more, so he still got a W. He's won 4 in a row. So that if he were available, that's definitely a good pickup for sure. I think, well, not for sure, but I think it's a good pickup. And of course he gets the Yankees though. You don't want to face the Yankees,
but at least he's at home. At least he's at home, and he gets Cleveland on the road, which is okay. Like Cleveland's cooled a bit. They had that bit of a hot start, and I think now when we're back to talking about lineups, you looked at that lineup and you were like, come on, this has got some good pieces in it, but it's not a fully good lineup, and it's not. So yeah, his matchups were maybe even slightly below average, but not terrible. Anyways, that's what we're looking at as far as 2-start pitchers. Usually there are some 2-start pitchers. When I do the Yahoo article, I do it pitchers who are owned in less than half of Yahoo leagues. Some of those guys are not available in our NFBC leagues, but usually I can find at least 2 or 3 where I'm like, oh, that one's really good. But now we're starting to hit the season where, first of all, people have gotten smart and picked up all these Ronaldo Lopez types, that broke out and were in my articles early in the season. And then, like I said, this was a weird week. So I'll be interested to see where the trend goes from here. My gut is that it will be a better list of pitchers next week, but it was not very good this week. The reason I think it'll be better next week is there were still in the same article a lot of 1-start streamers who I really liked, who were good pitchers facing or okay pitchers facing bad teams. So some of those guys should cycle around and be 2 starts.
Right. So next week. Yeah, but so my guy was Robert Gasser this week. I liked his debut. I like his prospect pedigree. It's not elite like Christian Scott or anything, but I think he can pitch, and he gets the Pirates tomorrow, and then next week he gets the Marlins. And so, okay. Really, and more importantly, he avoids Boston and Houston. That worked out pretty well. And the thing is, or Houston and then Boston. So like they play those first 9 games this week and next week in places that have retractable roofs. So we know those games aren't going to get postponed.
Happen, yeah.
So, it's only Boston that has to worry about, but he doesn't have to worry about because he's not scheduled to pitch then. All things, everything stays on track. But so I actually went over $100 in my fab, both in the main event in the league that you and I are together, and for Yahoo Friends and Family, I went after him too. I got him in five out of 7 leagues, I think, that had fab this week.
Wow. He's
5
your
out of
guy.
8. Yeah.
Believing in the Brewers too with pitchers is good. Like, I don't blindly believe in the Brewers. Like, I wasn't all over Joe Ross or someone like that, like a reclamation project. Like, I'm not at that level.
Colin Ray.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't like Colin Ray. I had no interest in him. I think I put him at the bottom of the 2-Start Streamers article as a points league only guy, which is a lot of leagues. But anyways, but with the Brewers, I think you can believe in them as a smart organization. So an actual prospect like Gasser, maybe they can make him work from a pitching perspective. So I think that was an interesting one. But you got to take your shot at some point. You decide to take your shot this week on Gasser. You can only take those shots a few times a year.
Yep.
He's become, because you said you got him on 5 out of 7. He's become like integral part of your season now, because like I said, like you can't just be like in a week, you can't just be like, oh, Gasser didn't work out, I'll just put 100 down on the next guy.
Right.
Like,
that's right.
Well, you can, but you'll be broke in June.
Yeah.
And then you're done. Then there's no more gas. Then there's no more putting your foot on the gasser.
Yeah, there you go. Running gassers. That's what I'm doing there.
So,
I thought that it appealed to the gym teacher in you there.
Yeah, there you go. So you can only target, I don't know how many, triple digit pitchers you can go after in a year. I guess it depends if you need relievers or not, but it's probably only
less than 10.
Yes, for sure. I was going to say 2 or 3. If you don't need a closer, maybe 3. If you do need to look for closers at some point, then maybe 2. And that's it. I mean, unless your roster is very imbalanced.
Right.
I have some teams that are pitching well but not hitting well, and I'm probably not going to go after any gassers. It'll all be Manzardos, right? Trying to get maybe the next good hitter. So far, that hasn't worked.
I ratcheted down my Manzardo bids this week because of not just how he looks, but also because how he's being deployed. He's not going to play every day. And it's tough to spend at least 10% of your budget on a guy that's playing 4 times a week.
I totally agree. And in the one league where he was available for me the previous week, when I did bid 100 for him, now I regret it and feel like I got a little over my skis. After seeing it for a week play out, I was more like 30 or 40. Didn't get him anywhere. Like I said, it's funny, the one week where I got him for 100, I was like, oh, Fred, you're so smart. Like you figured out that's the one league where he was sitting on waivers, even though he wasn't getting called up till the next day, and you got him for a reasonable price. And now I wish I could throw him back.
Yeah. And that's been the case with almost everyone.
Again, right. Because again, in that league, I need hitting more than pitching, and there can only be so many Manzardos. I can't bid 100 on every pitching or every hitting prospect who comes up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And Adam appreciates your wordplay. So well done. So
there's on the way out. How much fab is too little fab right now from 1,000? 5 should you have 500 left?
I think I think there are occasions where you could be as little as 300 if you got a couple of big name guys. That's also known as the Dalton Del Don method. Our friend and
get poor, get broke right away.
If you're getting impact guys, if you got Ronel Blanco and in Christian Scott, well, maybe and plus others, if you got Kirby Yates, well, hell, I mean, I'll be at 300 for those 3. I wish I would have gotten those guys. I didn't get any of them. And that's kind of the point, is I'm missing out. You can win a lot of the little ones, but you got to be patient with those little ones too. And a lot of times they're not going to work out there. You say get them early, but it's easier said than done too.
Yeah.
I think that I don't mind going big. I didn't mind going big on Ellie last year. Even though he petered out at the end, it was well worth it for a good 6 weeks. And you'll take that 6 weeks of production and then make the decision when he slumps. Yeah,
for sure. And I mean, you got to take your chances. Like, going big on Ellie last year was not a terrible move. And if you went big on Ellie last year, then you had the money to, because you had saved it until whatever it was, June, right? When he came up. So it wasn't like you went big in the first 6 weeks or so. It means that you still had 700 or something in June, or something like the 600 or something in June.
Right.
Anyways, right. I tend to get a little nervous if I can't be a full Dalton. I can go down to 500 by now. I could go down to maybe 400 by the end of this month. I get a little nervous if I go too low too fast. I just feel like
I do too. I mean, that's typically, I'm with you on that. I'm more you than Dalton when it comes to
closers should be a big part of that decision though. If you have two or three closers, you can go a little harder because especially if you have three, because if you have three, especially like you might lose one along the way, but you probably will be okay in saves, and that's often where you have to spend. So, you know, someone got named closer, he's going to cost 200. So if you have two or three closers, that's where you can try to nickel and dime, look for next closers, things like that, but spend a little more on the other positions.
Yeah, I guarantee you those who spent up on Kirby Yates are loving it right now.
Yeah.
So
those
I mean
that through Trevor McGill as well.
Yeah, Trevor McGill's been pretty good so far too.
Good. Yeah. Hector Neris, same thing.
Yeah, I think he's been a little like edge of the seat sort of guy there, and I'm not sure he's still locked in full time. But yeah, you're right. It's been
with Al's layout, you know, with Al's lay now on the IL, so he's got a little.
That's true.
More. Yeah.
All right, I think that's a good way to end. Clever wordplay by Fred and clever observations on the fab budget there. Big thanks to everybody who jumped in on the chat with us streaming live, and those who download later. We thank you as well. We thank Sorare for jumping on board with their Sorare MLB product there, and they're going to be a sponsor for us for a while. And of course, Prize Picks, always been a loyal sponsor of ours as well. We thank you for that. If you like this podcast, please hit that like button, give us feedback. Please hit that subscribe button and check out our website, rotowire.com/pod. Get you a free peek behind the paywall. No credit card is required. You just put in a valid email address and off you go. And hopefully you'll want to subscribe after that. Thanks everybody for listening to us. Take care. Have a great day.